Penguin Random House Audio presents The Pope at War, The Secret History of Pius XII, Mussolini, and Hitler, by David I. Kertzer, read for you by Arthur Morey. To the memories of my father, Morris Kertzer, and my father-in-law, Jacob Dana, chaplain and physician respectively in the U.S. Army overseas in the Second World War, and to their great-granddaughter, Little Saul. Cast of Characters. The Pope and the Church. Pius XII, Eugenio Pacelli, 1876 to 1958, son and grandson of lay luminaries of the Vatican. The frail but highly intelligent Pacelli never served as a parish priest or diocesan bishop, but, following ordination, immediately joined the Vatican Secretariat of State. In Germany as nuncio from 1917 to 1929, he acquired a deep knowledge of that country before being appointed Cardinal Secretary of State by Pius XI in 1930. Ever cautious and never comfortable with multi-party governments, on becoming Pope in 1939, he attempted to repair frayed Vatican relations with Mussolini and Hitler. Borgoncini Duca, Francesco, 1884 to 1954. A priest who had lived his entire life in Rome, Borgoncini was appointed the Vatican's first nuncio to Italy following the signing of the Lateran Accords in 1929. He would remain at that post throughout the war and beyond. Although ignorant of the larger world and devoid of intellectual curiosity, Borgoncini was one of Pius XII's key emissaries to the fascist regime, which he constantly lobbied on behalf of the Pope. Along with Father Tacchi Venturi, he repeatedly urged the fascist authorities to spare baptized Jews from the draconian racial laws. Maglione, Luigi, 1877 to 1944. Through his intelligence and drive, Maglione, a Neapolitan from a poor family, made his way up through Rome's elite church training ground for the Vatican diplomatic service, serving as nuncio in Switzerland and then, from the mid-1920s to the mid-1930s, nuncio to France. Made a cardinal in 1935, he was one of the main contenders at the conclave that elected Pacelli Pope. Although Pius XII named Maglione as his Secretary of State, the two men never developed a warm relationship. Approachable but careful about what he said, he was popular among the foreign ambassadors to the Vatican who met with him every Friday. Pius XII's discomfort with having anyone in the role of Secretary of State became clear when, following Maglione's death, he decided not to name a successor. Montini, Giovanni Battista, 1897 to 1978. From a prominent northern Italian Catholic family, his father having served as a member of Parliament for the Catholic Popular Party before Mussolini disbanded it, Montini was appointed substitute for ordinary affairs, one of the two deputy positions in the Vatican Secretariat of State in 1937 under Cardinal Pacelli. He remained in that position following Pacelli's elevation to the papacy. Smart and refined in manner, but with little worldly experience, he was a favorite of Pius XII, and would himself one day become Pope, taking the name Paul VI. Orsenigo, Cesare, 1873 to 1946. A priest in Milan with no international experience and little knowledge of the larger world, Orsenigo was appointed nuncio to the Netherlands and then to Hungary in the 1920s before being named to replace Eugenio Pacelli as nuncio to Germany in 1930. A man of limited intelligence and enamored of Hitler, he would try to impress the Nazi officials with his sympathy for their cause, while wishing they treated the Church better. Pacelli, Eugenio, see Pius XII. Pius XI, Achille Ratti, 1857 to 1939. The then Archbishop of Milan was elected Pope in 1922, the same year that the fascist March on Rome led the king to appoint Mussolini prime minister. Remarking that God works in strange ways, Pius XI found in Mussolini a man who could help restore many of the privileges the Church had lost in Italy the previous century. But by the last year of his life, Pius XI began to regret all he had done to help the Duce solidify power in Italy, antagonized above all by Mussolini's embrace of Hitler, a man he despised as an enemy of the Church and a proponent of a pagan ideology. Tacchi Venturi, Pietro, S.J., 1861 to 1956. A prominent Roman Jesuit and from 1918 to 1940, rector of Rome's major Jesuit church, Tacchi Venturi became Pius XI's unofficial conduit with Mussolini shortly after Mussolini came to power, meeting with the dictator regularly to convey Pius XI's requests. Although the Jesuit met with Mussolini less often during the war years, Pius XII would often take advantage of the huge network of contacts Tacchi Venturi had made with the leaders of the fascist regime to convey papal requests. Among these were repeated attempts to have baptized Jews spared from the country's anti-Semitic campaign. Tardini, Domenico, 1888 to 1961. From a modest Roman family, Tardini served in the Vatican Secretariat of State much of his life. Named substitute for ordinary affairs in 1935, and then secretary for extraordinary ecclesiastical affairs in 1937, he would share, with Giovanni Montini, the two major positions under the Secretary of State over the following years. Sharp-tongued and quick-witted, he would regularly be called upon by the Pope to prepare briefing papers to lay out his options during the war. Tardini trusted neither the Germans nor the Allies. Mussolini and the fascist regime. Mussolini, Benito, 1883 to 1945. Formerly a radical socialist, Mussolini was nothing if not an opportunist and realized that gaining Vatican backing would prove a great boon to his ambitions. Offering a range of benefits to the Church, culminating in the Lateran Accords of 1929, which created Vatican City and ended the separation of church and state in Italy, he came to be hailed by the Vatican as the man of Providence. But his increasing embrace of Nazi Germany in the late 1930s antagonized Pius XI. He would boast to Hitler that he knew how to keep the Pope in line, and Pius XII relied on the Italian dictator to help convince the Führer to make peace with the Church. As his own troubles mounted during the Second World War, Mussolini placed constant pressure on Pius XII to do nothing to undercut the Axis cause. Alfieri, Dino, 1886 to 1966. Elected to Parliament on the fascist ticket in 1924, Alfieri rose through government ranks. In November 1939, Mussolini appointed Alfieri, then in charge of the government propaganda ministry, to replace Bonifacio Pignati as Italy's ambassador to the Holy See. A few months later, Mussolini would decide he needed an ambassador more kindly disposed to the Nazis to go to Berlin, and so he appointed Alfieri to the German embassy. At his last meeting with Alfieri before he left for Germany, the Pope entrusted Alfieri with a message for Hitler, but then thought better of it. Attolico, Bernardo, 1880 to 1942. A Southerner and career diplomat, Attolico married into the black aristocracy, the Roman elites whose families were closely linked to the popes. Following stints as Italian ambassador to Brazil and the Soviet Union, he was named ambassador to Germany in 1935. No friend of the Nazis, he tried to dissuade Mussolini from joining the Axis war. Switching positions with Alfieri in 1940, he served as the Duce's loyal ambassador to the Vatican until his death in early 1942. Typical of many men in Italy's foreign service, Attolico served the fascist regime loyally and, following Italy's entry into the war, worked tirelessly to prevent any Vatican criticism of the Axis cause. Buffarini, Guido, 1895 to 1945.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?